Now, in the next few minutes,
prepare to
dive deeper.
Welcome to another episode of Dive Deeper. I'm your host, Victor Vasquez, and today we're going to be taking it a little bit serious, all the jokes aside today. We're going to be going over mental health. We're living in a really tough time right now. We're living in a pandemic, first time, ever, and not a lot of us know how to get through our issues and solve them. So today I'm someone's joining me through via Zoom, Miss Georgette Van Vliet. How you doing, Miss Georgette? How you doing, Georgette?
I'm great, Victor. Thanks for having me on your show.
Me and Georgette are going to be talking about how to get through our frustrations and how to just, how to cope with what's going on right now. So talk to me about yourself first before we start before we dive deep into your life, Ms. Georgette. What was your come up story? What makes you through your social media? I love seeing through your social media you post weekly your own challenges so you can show that other people that you can actually do them. You're not just preaching a word, you're actually doing what you preach. So talk to me about your social media. How does your social media work? Tell me about that.
So yes, I post daily, and I absolutely post things that I have personal experience with. Mm-hmm. And I'm not embarrassed by my daily challenges. And not so much now because I've worked so hard on myself. I work a lot on my own personal development. But I've really come a long way with my own depression, my own negativity, my own frustration in life. I was a very, very angry person for a long time. And I knew that wasn't living my best life. Mm-hmm. So I knew I had to find ways to overcome these things. And I did. I worked really hard at it. So I've written books about it. I've written ebooks. And I post every single day because I feel like the things that I went through and the things that I go through, everyone's going through, but maybe they don't know how to overcome it. So that's my goal when I post every day.
So now in the past, I remember in the past you invited me to you host like a few seminars and everything, and you do a lot of stuff with relationships and everything.
Yes. So in the past, when we were able to see each other in person, right? Yeah. I did a lot of relationship workshops. I talked a lot about how to be healthy in a relationship. None of us, especially if we've come from broken families or families where our parents were fighting a lot, we don't have a model for what a healthy relationship looks like. And I can attest to the fact that my father was always angry before he left. Mm-hmm. He was always angry. So a lot of times I get that my anger comes from, I always saw my dad being angry. So it's a natural reaction for me to be angry in certain situations. So as I learned to be healthier in a relationship, to communicate what it means to be assertive, what it means to protect yourself with boundaries, like not being too nice to everybody and having them walk all over you, I started doing workshops, and I've helped a lot of people.
Now going forward and through everything with COVID, and you're striving, and you're honestly you definitely have helped out a lot of people, and I love that you seek to help out people, and you seek it just because you have been in that your own circumstance yourself. And what I love is that that what I think everybody else loves, especially when if I'm talking to my therapist or I'm talking to someone in general, is a lot of people call it trauma bonding, but it's not really trauma bonding. I always call it like when you can relate to someone else's, what they went through, like look at you went through, you're like an American dream story in my, and like when we spoke about it, you don't seem like the person who had a troubled past. You strive through that diversity and everything, and you got to the place you are now. And what makes you think as an individual person that you stuck to your own path?
I have to tell you, I feel like I'm very blessed. I don't know what else to say. I don't know how somebody can come to, like, my parents were immigrants. I was born here. They probably should never have gotten married. They fought forever. My father left, moved back to Greece when I was 12 years old. It was very traumatic. My brother turned to drugs, was a severe drug addict, died of an overdose. I've been through a lot of trauma, but for some reason, even though this was all going on, I was like, okay, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to educate myself. Okay, I'm going to get a job. And for some reason, I guess as I saw the insanity in my house, I was trying so hard to find stability. So when I got a job, I was like, I'm going to make this job work. Like when I got married, I'm going to make this marriage work. I wanted, and I've done it. I'm successful in that I've turned everything around. That all the craziness at home where I grew up, I created the most stable environment for my son and for myself. And it's not easy to do because it's easier to leave.
Especially from coming up from something where you didn't have that understanding and you
And
didn't
also,
have that coaching route.
and also, how can you be healthy when you're mentally unhealthy because all you saw was unhealthy, but you want to be healthy? So I had no skills. I was like, how do you do this? And I learned. I read a lot. Reading is key. Reading absolutely makes you a leader in your life, and that's how I've led my life. Like I read really good books about self-help, about motivation, inspiration, and I can use that tool. I can use this idea. I can use this practice.
And that's something that a lot of people
do.
do. That's something that a lot of people do is take the time out to read a book. Even in high school, like, they have us read like Shakespeare books, like The Pit and the Pen, like, no, that's, Edgar Allan Poe. But, they have us read these certain books, right? And we always think like, oh, how are we going to apply this to everyday life? But it's just, the reason why they're giving us these certain books is just because they're giving us a different outlook in life and how someone else thought. Like it's such a universal book. There's all these books I think are universal. Like they're timeless. I mean, like they're timeless. They're timeless pieces. They're going to be around forever. And then like I read a book it's called How to Be a Badass by Jennifer. I forgot her last.
I love that book.
Yeah. And I love, and it got me through. I read it during the pandemic and I have my whole closet door filled with Post-it notes. The more you give, the more you receive. And it's 110% true. Cause I thought about when I was building up this podcast, I was like, I'm sitting here and I'm just thinking, I'm like, oh, I want to be the best. I want to be a great podcaster. I want to do all this. But I was sitting on a stool and, I wasn't putting in as much as I wanted. So I just thought about it. I was like, you know what? I just got to sit on it for 2-3 weeks. I got to really plan for it. I got to give, really plan for it. And then it received, and then like, thank God if I didn't have, I pulled the name Dive Deeper out of a hat. And if I didn't have the name, this wouldn't even be a thing. That's the one thing I'm really bad with is naming things. So I'm having trouble when I have kids. But we're living.
Follow your heart.
Yeah. I'd rather not have kids. That's following my heart right now. But,
no.
but, going forward, how you trying to, strive through COVID and everything? How are you trying to put together your franchise? How are you trying to keep on, producing everything besides social media? You have any plans upcoming?
I'm writing. I have several books. They're on my website. I'm posting videos every day. I actually just got asked tonight to write another article for another magazine. So
wow,
things
congrats.
are moving along. Yeah, things are moving along for me. And like you just said, it didn't just happen. I've been working at this for years. So as things come up and, new opportunities, I'm really excited about them and I take them. And I don't believe it or not, I don't let COVID stop me. I just don't.
That's become a lot of people's big excuse.
Yeah. Well, it's also scary.
It's also a real thing,
died.
Yeah,
it is. And I feel a little guilty about that sometimes. I'm never going to not take it seriously because people have died and it's an awful thing, but I am healthy. I take my vitamins. And you got to strive.
And yes, you're
yeah. And you have to be in this world and of this world. Hiding in your house, that's not living.
And it's hard because we're all like that. We're all trying to get out of that habit that we're all in right now. And that's something people are afraid to go into. Like I remember I went to some of my little brother and sister at the American Dream. The mall. Went to like a little carnival place, and then I was just like nervous to bring them in public and around just so many people, just because like I haven't been in a crowd and that big in such a long time. But you know what? I got there, I had my little anxiety attack prior, and then when I got there, I just took a breath and then I just made sure the kids had a good time. But it's weird how we're all just so paranoid now. And how do you think what do you, besides like the media and the news, like what do you think it is in everybody personally? Because everybody's saying, oh, like I don't listen to the media. Everybody doesn't think they have a problem, but I think everybody right now is in distress. Honestly, I think everybody doesn't really know, and some people hide it. People like they go to the gym and do this. They're trying to live their everyday. They're like zombies. They're trying to do their everyday life the same way they were before, but there's just something that's not the same, and that's something that I'm trying to learn right now. So what do you think are some ways that we can get through of just getting back outside?
Well, getting back outside, right? Getting out, I walk every day. I try to be outside every day. I try, again, you want to use good judgment. I've been eating at restaurants, they're not at full capacity. I go out with my friends. I do things. I've been doing more and more because what I'm finding is by staying home, I'm getting depressed.
Hmm.
I'm getting lazy. I am getting so lazy. Like I'm just laying around.
Just doing
I'm
nothing,
not
looking
as
at the sky,
productive,
and
right?
I know it's insane.
And that's so unhealthy. There's so many unhealthy things happening. But I do think we have to use our judgment. I do think that really I'm going to stress to everyone, my doctor treated patients since March. Nobody in his office got sick. He didn't get sick. He lives by vitamin C, zinc,
Hmm.
vitamin D, taking care of yourself, getting enough sleep.
And a
So
lot
there
of
are
the
ways you
news
can,
weren't telling us what these things that we should be doing, and and this
right,
is the stuff that we should be doing now and proceed. And don't just take a vitamin C pill tomorrow and then you think you're gonna be good for next week. Just stay
right.
on top of your body. Your body's the most, and the body's the only thing that's gonna get you through your life.
And your body knows how to deal with these situations. Now, again, last March, when the virus first hit, it was deadly. And it's still deadly to old people. It's still deadly to people who are
High
like
risk.
obese. There are some high risk issues, no doubt about it. But
Hmm.
most of us are going to be okay because
Hmm.
COVID means cold.
Yeah.
So most of us are going to be okay. And, it's so funny. Like I'm watching the news and they're like, schools have to open. And in my head, I'm thinking everything has to open.
That is
Like,
true. We can't just
if
be
you're going to open
sheltered.
up schools, open up the sporting events, open
Hmm.
up the restaurants, and people are going to get sick like we did with the flu. And like with the flu, we're
We're
going to
just
be
gonna
careful.
cope with it.
We're going to cope with it. But you don't, I worry about people your age being in the house, playing video games, being in the basement. It's like, oh, you've got to get out there and date. You've got
Yeah.
to get out there and live. You've got to get out there and love.
Especially right
You
now, it's
do.
impossible to socialize right now, especially when you're wearing a mask. Like right now, if I go to a bar, I go anywhere, like it's very awkward walking up to a girl and just having that first impression of just like, I don't really even know what the bottom of her face looks like. I don't even know what facial expression she's giving me. And it's very odd, and it's clearly not a way to live. And sometimes I sit here and think, is this going to be the rest of our lives? And hopefully, I don't want to think it is. I mean, our lives are going to be different for the rest of our life, but I just can't wait until the day is that I'm like hanging out with my kids or just hanging out with my friends and I'm older. And I'm like, remember that time we used to wear masks? Like, do you think we're ever going to have that time that we're going to go back to just like that snap of civilization?
I think COVID, like the flu, first of all, it's a virus. It's never going away.
Yeah,
So it's
that's true.
always
Yeah.
going to be here.
It was
We're
social,
going
as
to build,
society has socialized.
right. And we're going to build the antibodies to it. We're going to be, our bodies are going to build the resistance. Should we wear masks maybe at certain times of the year if we want to be safer? Maybe. I think it's funny that you went somewhere and you met a girl with a mask. You know what? Maybe it's a new way to date. Just like, I don't know what you look like. Let me see if I can just get to know you.
Yeah.
Maybe you're a nice person and I won't care what you look like.
Yeah, she takes over. She
Maybe
has a
that's
grill.
right,
She has
right.
gold teeth. Yeah. I don't know. Just I feel like we're living in odd times. But just to get through it, what are some things that you do for your everyday life just to keep yourself active and just to get out and just to try new things, especially right now. Like I'm afraid to go to New York. I'm not really afraid, but certain people are afraid to go to New York, go out and just go do different things, because it's just the restrictions everywhere.
And there are restrictions. You can't go to restaurants in New York City. But I journal every day and I make a list. My question to myself every day is, what do you want? What do you want? And I make a list of what I want. And that's what I focus on. I think a lot of us have gained a lot of weight. I've gained a lot of weight from snacking and being home.
Mm.
So I'm trying to be a lot more mindful of what I'm eating. It's a lot about using your time constructively. I could be sitting on my phone, scrolling through things. I'm like, what am I doing? An hour could go by. So if I feel like scrolling on my phone, I'm trying to go to YouTube videos that are going to teach me something.
Yeah.
Whether they're self-help, whether it's a mystic. I love Sadhguru. He's an Indian mystic. It's beautiful.
Mhm.
So I'm learning something.
So you're just constantly acknowledging yourself.
Exactly. And then I'm trying to write more. So because I've gotten so lazy at night, sometimes I'm just sitting back. I'm like, all right, force yourself to write for 15, like write a new book for 15 minutes.
Mhm.
And then 15 minutes turns into an hour. You know what I mean? So
Exactly.
it's just getting myself moving. I told you, I go out with my friends. I go out. I'm not going to lie to you. I feel like the restaurants are social distancing.
Yeah, everything. You're just trying to get back into civilization. You're trying to live your life. You're not trying to live your life in the way that you know what it is? It's just, what thing is the media really is, it just pressures you to not, they say to live your life, but as soon as you go to do something, they'll be like, oh, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing this right? And it's just like, I'm just doing the best I can. You know what I mean? Everybody's behind their phone just judging everybody. And I think that's the main problem right now. We're living in we're living in a time where everything is just really like criticized through like social media, and you sometimes don't know what to believe through the false media, and through all the people saying this, saying that, and it's just so overwhelming. And we live in a very time it's kind of full of hate. How do you feel that, like, for a person who doesn't want to be involved with that, how do you separate yourself from that?
It's a good question. So first of all, I'm very proud of you for being aware that there's a lot of false news out there, and
A
that
lot.
even with this virus, like a lot of things aren't adding up. A lot of things don't make sense, and young people need to ask the questions. And Victor, I don't know if you remember when no, you're too young.
Now I was like
I
two or
was
three, yeah.
teaching. I was teaching the day 9/11 happened, the
Hmm.
attacks happened, and I remember saying to the kids in the classroom, like, there were a lot of planes still out that day. There were like 11 planes. They weren't talking about 7 planes that were missing. Like, you need to ask the questions, like, where are these other planes? What's going on?
Hmm.
And it's the same thing with this virus. It's like, like they're saying, you're going to get a vaccine, it's going to go away. No, it's a virus. It's never going away. If we studied basic science,
Hmm.
we know that. So there's a lot of like stress,
Manipulating,
anxiety,
kind of.
information. Yeah.
I feel
And
like it
so
just. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, we have to ask questions. You're not being a bad person if you're questioning the media,
Hmm.
because they're doing some skeptical things right now. And I love what you mentioned about the hate. It's interesting because positive thinking, my philosophy of positive thinking and the law of attraction, judgment and criticism are the lowest forms of energy. So I can't believe as a society we've come back to that. Like, I will not allow myself to go there. I don't judge myself. I don't judge you.
Hmm.
I don't criticize. Like I said to you before, unless someone's a murderer or something severe, we're all human beings having a human experience. We all make mistakes. We have to accept that and love that about each other. As a community, we can't be beating each other up. So I don't go for that. Like, I won't go for that kind of.
Diversity and that separation, that issue that we're actually going on now. And don't you think it's just like when someone has an issue with something, or like when someone's very naive or ignorant, do you think it's like a sense of in like lack of intelligence, lack of information on the source? Like, because that's what we're dealing with right now. That's what we're dealing with a lot of just hate, like
Yeah.
just for honestly, just I feel like we're living in the 50s right now. I feel like we're living in the 50s, and just everything is just mishmash, like not no
McCarthyism.
one's on one page, and it's odd. And I do not like, I find it, and it's extremely scary to bring up kids into this world right now. And I have a little brother and sister, 7, and my little brother's about to be 7, and my little sister's about to be 3. And they're always in the house. And I don't want them to even have the thought that there is racism, or like, I want them obviously to know our history, but I don't want them to have that type of understanding of hate, Like, I don't want someone knowing that there's a hateful rally of people that want to get rid of these certain types of people. I just want my little brother or sister to learn love, learn how to do this, and learn what's right and what's wrong. There's a different way of introducing things to, especially in education. A lot of people saying education, we got to start telling these kids that our founding fathers weren't so great. But I feel like if you tell a kid who's in 1st, 5th grade, through then, that their founding fathers were rapists or murderers and all this, I don't think it's knowledgeable to be putting those type of words in their head, because it's kind of like verbal abuse without even knowing. It's just planting tiny little bombs. And do you think a lot of people now, they just stick to the facts, and they don't want to believe what the facts are? Like, I just don't like, what is the hate that is stemming by everybody? What do you think it is?
I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole.
Oh,
I
okay.
think that but I'm going to tell you that I agree with you in the sense that, if you're going to dig up dirt on every single person, you're going to dig up dirt on every single person. Like, there's no country that hasn't been founded on war
Hmm.
and horrific violence. Every country stemmed from that, unfortunately.
Hmm.
It's part of our humanity to overtake and overcome. And so, we're beating up everybody, but so we weren't living back then. There were different circumstances.
Hmm.
You can't judge somebody from in the 1700s
Yeah.
and 21st century standards. Like, obviously, like, and people get mad at me when I say this because they don't, because they're so angry. But like, my family came here in 1947, let's say, I think it
Hmm.
was right after World War II. They left Greece and they came to America. And when my uncle was in his 70s and Barack Obama ran for president,
Mm-hmm.
he voted for him. And he called me after he voted and he said, who would have thought I would be voting for a Black man for president? Like, he was in awe of what was happening in this country. And when I told a friend that, she's like, well, she went crazy. She was so angry about it. And I was like, you're missing the point.
Yeah.
He grew up in the 50s. Like, this is
a different
big deal.
mindset.
Like,
yeah, it was a different mindset.
But also, we are coming together. Like, in other words, it's not.
It isn't all segregated.
Yeah.
It's the media that really segregates it, I feel like.
Yes.
I feel like that's what it is, and I feel like it's just constantly pointing out the bad. But how do you, like, do you have any skills that, like, you do to yourself? Because, like, I as an older person, I know you should pay attention to, like, you should pay attention to the news. You should know what's going on in your country and what's going to affect you. But when there's so much toxic stuff, like during this COVID, like this during all COVID, right? How do you just turn it off? Like, even social media, like, how, like, what are, like, besides working, you know, there's working out and everything, but is there any certain skills that how do you just, like, turn it off? Like, I can't watch it right now, but it's attracting, but I can't watch it. Is there any certain skills that people should go by?
I think you have to watch it. I think you have to know what's going on, and then I think you need to research it. Like, I go to many different sites and many different sources, and I fact check. And I think right now we have an obligation in this society to fact check. So when people make outrageous claims about others and whatever, you can say, wait a minute, that's not true. This is the fact. So I think when you're looking at facts, like someone said to me, well, what political party are you? I'm like, I'm a fact checker. I don't care about political parties. Yeah. I want to know the truth. So when you come from that point of view, it's neutral. You're not angry. You're not yelling, ranting, and raving. I just want to know the facts.
You just want to know the facts.
And I think that's really important for us as a society we can't ignore it. Like, my husband would be like, turn that off. I can't watch it. I'm like, no, it's our history right now. We have an obligation to be a part of it. We have an obligation to educate ourselves and know what's happening in our community and spread the right word or the right message. That's how I feel. I think that helps me descend from being angry
reality and kind of
how
just
unjust it is. It's very unjust, some of the things that are happening. But again, I'm fact checking. I want to know the facts.
Now, let's go off topic a little bit. Let's talk about, like, I was watching on one of your on some of your Instagram posts, and I realized you said that you love the word create. And now, can you tell me the reason why you love the word create? Because
when I was depressed, and I feel like when I was in high school, everything was great. I don't know why. But then once I got out of high school, I had no skills to be an adult. Like, nobody taught me how to adult. And I got very, right? Like, no one tells you what to do. Like, how do you adult, And I went through some really difficult times. I made bad decisions, just lost, and my depression was so, like, it overwhelmed me. It consumed me. And I had to learn that I didn't have to be depressed. So it was like these little baby steps that I took every day to smile more, keep a gratitude journal, do more positive things for myself, pursue different friends, maybe, different job. I moved. Like, I did so many little things for myself. I was creating a life that I loved. So when I was in my depression, and of course I blame my parents, I hated them. I felt like they did this to me. They weren't there to support me. They were always fighting. They got divorced. They were into their own lives. But then it becomes, all right, so now you're 26 years old. You can still blame your parents. Like, what are you doing for yourself? So it just became a constant, what are you going to do here? What are you going to do for yourself? And then answering that question. So I realized very early on, it was all with me. Every decision I made, I was creating my life. So what was I going to decide to do? Was I going to date him? Was I going to date somebody who drank too much, let's say?
Yeah.
Was I going to take a better job that was going to pay me better? Was I going to go back to school so I can get promoted? Like, what are the better decisions to make in your life? And that's what I started doing. Like, my decision making became, well, what's the end result going to be? Is this going to be a better life for me? And that's really how I got to be where I am today. And I'm really proud of myself with that, because nobody helped me. I had to do it all by myself.
Congratulations. And, you're going to keep on striving too. And what's amazing about it is you gotten through all that. And people don't realize is that once you get like, people think it's like, when, like, you gotta strive now, but you're, no matter what age you are, no, it doesn't matter if you're 90
Always.
or 12, you're always going to be striving to do something. You're always going to be constantly working on yourself. And that's what's like, some people got to realize that you're not in a rush. You're not in a rush. Just slow down. Like, a lot of people get all these face designs, all these face tattoos, and I'm just like, how do you know you're gonna like that 20 years from now? Like,
You're not.
Yeah,
You're
like
not.
what if? Yeah, like,
Yeah.
the times are gonna change. And what do you like? What would you say to those people who make those impulse decisions, that they're in a rush to do something that is so bad that they kind of self-sabotage? What are some of the things that you kind of saw in your life that you're like, oh, I really want this, but you were working for it so bad, but it failed because you were going the wrong routes to it?
I think very early on, I learned to make better choices for myself. Like, I never did drugs, like, well, my brother was a drug addict. So obviously that, I feel like he helped me make that decision early on.
Yeah.
I just feel like I had to very consciously, and it wasn't easy, like, stop hanging around with certain people. I had to consciously, like, when I was dating, like, no impulse decision making with dating, go out on a date, eat dinner, whatever, say good night, thank you very much, shake hands, like, not even a kiss. Like, I like, just really setting up some nice boundaries so that whatever was going to happen next was my choice.
Yeah, you made your own bed in the sense.
Exactly.
Yes.
And you mentioned something else that I wanted to say to you, making your own decisions. Something else you said that really was important. Making your own boundaries, making better choices, focusing on your career. Like, a lot of my friends were like partying all night. This is a big one.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of my friends were partying all night or partying after work. Like, they'd go to happy hour, and I'd be like, you're spending money. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not saying I didn't do it, but I stopped quickly. Like, I didn't do it every day.
You checked yourself. Yeah.
Exactly. Because, like, I had to get up for work, and I didn't want to be hungover. Mm-hmm. I had to make sure I was dressed well. Like, if I'm looking to be professional, I can't be like out all night, or I can't be like calling out sick because I'm hungover. Mm-hmm. And the same thing with the drinking. Like, like in the afternoon, like going to happy hour, it's like, what are you doing? Like, is this really like what you want to be, hungover at 6:00, and you've spent $100 that maybe you could have used for something else? Like, just starting to make better decisions all the time. And it was great because even though it was hard initially, it was hard to say no. I wanted to go out with everybody.
And do you think that
it was worth it?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, in the end, it was worth it. In the end, and I want to go back to relationships for a minute. Just want to say something.
That was what I was bringing
but
next.
In the end, it was worth it. In the end, look at me. I'm a supervisor at a high school. I'm a college professor. I'm writing books. Like,
you're
I'm proud of myself.
Good. Yeah, you're setting a life for yourself, and you're setting a good example for your son as well. And
right.
And then he's going to do the exact same thing for his children as well. And then you're setting a line. You're setting a bloodline.
Exactly.
You stopped it from your childhood. You stopped that.
Yes.
You stopped the badness, and then you knew you were going to have to change it in some type of way. And you also wanted to talk about relationships. What do you think about relationships now? And like, how do you feel two people being stuck with each other for probably 6 months straight, maybe not be able to socialize with everybody else? Do you think that young people nowadays rush into things too fast?
Yes. I think social media and texting are awful for relationships. I feel like, I'm very concerned about people that go on Match or websites. Then they start, I see it all the time because I'm a coach. People call me. They're texting. It becomes sexting. You know that.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, when they finally meet for their first date, they feel like they've been in a relationship for 6 months, and they go flying into something that should take 6 months to a year. Then it fizzles out, and they're all crying and upset. I'm like, you got this all wrong. Like, you slow down. Like, you should just not be. The steps to a relationship are slow. Our brains can't handle that kind of intimacy so quickly. You need to get to know someone. That takes time, and that takes physical presence. Texting is not getting to know somebody.
That's a lot of things. That's like one thing I can't stand is a lot of my friends like we don't meet up anymore, and especially that's what happens now, especially because we have to social distance and everything. But there was a certain time where we didn't see each other for almost 9 months. All my friends, some of my female friends, and I'm just like, and I was just socializing through words, through a phone the entire time, and I'm just like, what do I do today? Like, I have to FaceTime my friends to hang out with them. Like, it's very like very frustrating. Forget depressing. Like depressing's already on there. It's already on the table. It's very frustrating to be a best friend to your phone. It's pretty much being a best friend to a robot, you know?
Horrible. My son's your age, he's 18, and I'm like, we've been having this conversation since he's young. Get out of the basement, turn that video game off, and go out and go find your friends, go do something. And he does. Like he'll invite people over, they hang out in the backyard in the summer. But I have to force it. I'm like, this is not a way to live your life. Like, it's scary to me.
It's like they have their own community on it. It's like it is a big community. It is a big, like a lot of my friends, there are really, 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 really big gamers to the point where they're in chats. All of them are in chats all day playing the video games together. And I get it. I'm not going to bash what they love, but it isn't going to be great. It isn't going to be a great turnout. Yeah.
It's not living. And I'm going to tell you, Victor, I know men who are in their 30s and 40s that are still doing it. Life is passing them by and they don't even know how old they are. Like they're still in the basement. Yeah. And that's something that I will not let my son do. I'm like, no, you're going to live. You've got to get out there, meet people, socialize, feel the human connection.
Yeah, travel, work, life experiences. The one thing that I always preach to people is that, like, especially when they're graduating high school, is like everybody thinks they have to jump to college. And I want to go back to college. I always think I think it was appropriate that I took about 2 years off. Yep. And I thought about it. I had my life experience. I lived on my own. I got jobs. I did everything I could. And that's the one thing I always told people to do is just get a life experience. Like, deal with dickheads. Like for 12 hours a day, deal with people rushing you constantly. Deal with when you have to go to a new job, something's different every week. Get stressed out. Honestly, that builds character. If you're sitting there, just lollygagging all day, like life is going as a breeze, you're gonna be miserable. Everybody's gonna be like, "Oh, that person has millions of dollars. How can they be miserable?" Just because everything's now easy, everything is given to them, and like it's just like seeing the world. It's like seeing the world, the whole entire world, in 1 year, and then living the rest of your life knowing what everything's like. It's just like you got to take everything in increments. And how do you think we can slow it down? Do you have any tips to slow time down, slow life down, to really pay attention that you're living right now? Like, stop thinking about tomorrow, like constantly.
Well, I think we all have to put the phone down, all our devices down sometimes, and just look up at the sky. Like, go out and go for a walk. Yes. Like you said, call your friends. Like, hey, we're meeting in the park. Let's go. We're going to go for a walk. You know what I mean? Like, and just forcing ourselves to shift. Because even me, like I told you, sometimes at night I'm scrolling through my phone. I'm like, oh my goodness, an hour went by. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I know.
I make myself get up and go do something. So I think we got to put our devices down. And I do feel like, you want to talk about conspiracy theories, I feel like our devices were meant to dummy us down.
That's
like
true.
We're lulled, we're lazy, we're sitting, we're not doing, we're not talking, we're not communicating. It's a little scary.
I'm not I believe in God, but I'm not a big Bible person. I don't preach God. But I read something. One of my friends told me something from the Bible, and I kind of applied it into real everyday life. It's just not in the religious sense, but like maybe in the life sense. So it says, those who pay attention to like pointless objects lose the face of God. And like I thought of it in my own life. You know what I mean? I'm paying attention to a pointless object. That's my phone every day. And I'm not thinking I'm not losing focus in God, but I'm losing focus in my life. I'm staying on my phone the whole entire time. I'm constantly scrolling instead of actually going to do what I want to go do. Like there's a million and 10 times that I wanted to go sit in my room, shoot a little sketch, but I got stuck on my phone scrolling, or someone called me, or I'm just stuck on this thing. And that's where I take that little Bible piece into everyday life. Is just like when you pay attention to pointless objects like fidget spinners, remember those things? Like kids were being literally dumb over them, and things that are pointless objects that take up all your time. You lose the face of life. Like you lose your direction in a sense. Like you're just kind of stuck.
Totally.
And I feel like that's where a lot of people are right now. They're stuck in a way, and I don't want people to be in that way. You know what I mean? I want people to have their fucking mindset. I'm sorry, I mean curse, but I want to have their mindset, and they're looking forward. And like, do you
and be inspired, be motivated, get lit up.
What was it like back in the Dizzo day, though? Like, where you woke up every day, didn't even have to check your phone. Like, that's insane. And then like 20 years of a difference.
And we had the best time ever. But the other thing, Victor, you mentioned about being inspired. Oh goodness, we're talking so much. I forgot the point. The point you mentioned about God. God is within you. God is your spirit. It's your soul. So that saying, like the Bible, of course, if you go to church or whatever religion you are, every religion has a different point of view. But if you could just skip all that and just understand that you have an intuition within you and a soul within you, and that saying refers to that, like you are losing touch with yourself. You're losing touch with your humanity when you're sitting there staring at this screen.
Yeah, I took I picked it apart. I took religion out of it. I took like what's right and what's wrong out of it. And I just said like I applied it to my own life. And I feel like that's what everybody else should do with certain things. And I feel like a lot of people pay attention to what people say is right. You know what I mean? Like if someone said, if there's a mob of people saying something that's right, there's going to be tens of people that are just going to say, yeah, just because of, and we all have to have our individual choices and our individual mindsets. And that's something that I really want everybody just like to really work on. Even just to think about people who are listening right now, just think about like your individual self. Like be selfish, but not to hurt anybody else. Be selfish toward yourself. Like eat something, like don't bash yourself with every single meal, but don't spoil yourself way too much. Don't overdo it. If you're saying, oh yeah, I would have a chocolate cake tonight. All right, I have chocolate. But if you have it the 3 nights and 3 nights the next, it's just like, all right, now you're just abusing it. You gave yourself, and that's the thing when you said before about partying, it's like, you party after happy hour. It just, sometimes we just love that feeling so much and we just abuse it. And then we just, sometimes some people end up like, oh my God, I'm an alcoholic, and that's a dangerous route.
Drug addict or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how some people just wake up, they're like in a haze.
But just like you said, what all the things you just said, you had to sit and contemplate those thoughts. You can't contemplate on the phone. So, and I think a lot of people your age have lost that art of reflection of like, what is my life about? What do I want it to be about? What do I want out of this life? And, and then going to go get it, because like you said, it doesn't matter how old you are. You want to have that fire in you. Yeah. You always want to be wanting something and pursuing something and having a passion for something. That's who we are as human beings. And a lot of us have lost that. And you made another comment that I definitely want to talk about. Maybe mommy and daddy are going to give you an inheritance and you don't have to go to work. You know what? If you've never worked, you have no idea how to spend money. You're going to spend that all in a month. I mean, I've seen people go through their inheritance, forget about a year, 6 months. And then guess what? It's not coming back and you're going to have to work. So developing a work ethic now, even though it's hard, like you said,
being money savvy is the most important thing right now.
Yeah. And it just builds your character, builds your toughness when you have difficult people that you work with, or someone's rushing you, or someone has a high expectation of you when you have to learn how to do something. It's all good stuff. It's all part of life. Yeah,
and I think some people just dread those moments so much and they run away from them. They're like, oh, this guy Rick's an asshole at work, so I'm gonna quit this job instead of deal with this asshole. And then you go to the next job, then there's 5 assholes. I'm like, oh God, like, oh my God, I can't quit this one now. I should have stuck with the one. And
that's your life lesson. And that's your life lesson. And that goes for people that you date too. When you're dating somebody and it's a bad breakup, instead of being upset about the breakup, you have to ask, what's my life lesson? What was I meant to learn from this person or about myself? And that's the key to life. If you can keep looking at everything as a lesson, what am I supposed to learn here? You'll learn it and you can move on.
Yeah. And I really think people just should apply that to relationships more often, just so people are just more mindful for other people. Maybe because people don't think about it. Every person has came from a mother, right? And there's obviously twisted people up like in the world, obviously, and then for me, I had a trouble upbringing, but my mom always did the best that she could to always make sure I was the best kid, And right now she's doing the best she can to be the best mother to my little brother and sister, and she's doing a phenomenal job. And it just, the thing is, when I grow up, right, and what she always told me is that she doesn't want me to have the lifestyle that I had growing up, and that's the thing that everybody should like. I feel like sometimes we're all stuck in a depression, we're all oppressed, we're all kind of just like let's say my grandfather's an alcoholic, then my father's an alcoholic, and then why not I be an alcoholic? I got to drink those problems away too, and then all of a sudden it just becomes a chain of events, and all of a sudden you have a generation of alcoholism, and then it stems from different little things. But you made a stand. You said, I got to stop it, right? You got to stop the bloodline. And people nowadays have to just stop that bloodline. So people's got to snap in. Like if you're doing something bad, admit it. Like, because people, a lot of people nowadays just can't, like, they just blame everything, and they're like, oh, like, life sucks, blah, 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 this, blah, 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 that. But then you don't realize you effed over millions of other people throughout your life, you know, like, and then, like, you got to wonder, you know, what goes around comes around. And that's the one thing I want a lot of people to, like, understand is just, like, good, if you spread good, if you just be good to other people, life will just be so easy. You won't be, like, living in guilt. Like, I don't, like, the one thing I always love about myself is I never lived in guilt. I never was mean to somebody for my own frustrations. No. I mean, there has been a time where I would maybe been an asshole to one person, this and that, and I always apologize, always try, because that's me admitting that I was an asshole, and that's me saying, okay, like, my mom always says, like, that's good that I can self-reflect now at my age, and because that's not a lot of people do. You know, people focus on their issues when they're 30 or 40. And then that's when
or 50.
Yeah. And then they start living life at then. Yeah. You know, the people got a lot to learn.
And you mentioned a great one, blaming. You know, it's so easy to blame somebody else for your problems, but then you're not taking responsibility for them. So even though it's easy to say it's someone else's fault, if you don't learn your life lesson, that problem's going to keep showing up for you over and over because you're not fixing it.
That is
so
exactly
you're taking responsibility and saying, you know what, I screwed up. I drank too much, or I screwed up. I shouldn't have quit that job, or I wasn't trying hard enough at my job. I wasn't professional, or whatever. Owning it, and not criticizing yourself. That goes back to what I was saying earlier. This world's become so critical. It's just owning your humanity and saying, you know what, I could do better next time. I could do better in the next relationship. I'm going to do better at my next job, or I'm not going to drink because I want to be better than my parents, or whatever it may be. And it's hard work. It's not easy. But when you do
temptation sometimes can always take over, you know?
Right. But the feeling of accomplishment is amazing, especially with relationships. Those of us who didn't have a good example at home, who can make relationships work, that's a big deal. Like, I'm married 22 years. That's a long time. And it wasn't easy because you know what? When things weren't going well financially, or when we were fighting, I had no book to open and say, how do I fix it? You know,
yeah, there's no magic word.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I fixed it with love and no judgment. So did he, you know, really just trying to, like, be present for each other and accepting each other's humanity. We weren't perfect. We're not perfect. Mm-hmm. And yes, let's try to work at this. So it's a beautiful thing when you can get to that point and really be that self-reflective and aware of your own behavior, mm-hmm. and then be able to act on it in a positive, loving, constructive way.
Yeah, I really think it's positive just to think through your like, literally just think constantly. And do you, like, we're cutting almost in an hour, but do you have any? Like, we're almost an hour in. This is a long conversation, but just before we go, you know, I'm actually 2 more questions. If you had to say something to your younger self today, right? If your younger self was in a tough time, or that someone else could relate, what would you say to your younger self?
I would say, believe in yourself. You're beautiful. You're competent. You're worthy. You know, go live your dreams and don't let anything hold you back. Believe in yourself. I wish someone had told me that.
Yeah, that is beautiful. And that is true. It's like, you know, all you got to do is spread love.
Worthy.
And it's confidence.
Yeah, and worth. I'm worthy. That's it. We're all worthy. Everyone's worthy. Now,
do you? Now, I'm gonna leave everything in the description, in the bio, and everything. Your website and everything, so you don't have to say everything. But do you want? You can throw out a little plug where to find your book and everything if you want right now.
Okay, so my books, I wrote a lot of ebooks. They're short, they're quick to the point, and they're on my website, georgettevanvliet.com. I'll give you the information, and they're really what we're talking about now: little tips to help you create a life that you love, and little tips on how to release negativity. Any negative feelings you're holding are holding you back from living your best life. So yes, life is challenging, but there are positive ways to look at it. So that's what my books focus on.
Wow, I hope everybody go check it out. You know, we're living in a time that we need these types of tips. You know, and I want to thank you so much for, you know, just coming on and, you know, just, you know, preaching your word. I guarantee a lot of people will take something out of this and be able to live their everyday life with it. So I want to thank everybody for listening and tuning in, and keep on rocking with the free world, and go look at Georgette Van Vliet.